If you like my videos and want to support me on Patreon, please click the link below. Thank you. Every so often, a game comes along that redefines a genre. Minecraft did it for the sandbox genre. Grand Theft Auto did it for the open world genre. And Kung Fu Master did it for the beat 'em up genre. Not only did it have excellent graphics, but also innovative gameplay. The game was released at just the right time to become a massive success both in the arcades and at home. Where did the inspiration for this classic arcade game come from? So get ready to fight, young grasshopper. This is the history of Kung Fu Master. The year is 1983, and IRM designer Takahashi Nishiyama is looking to create another successful arcade coin-op. He had already designed the 1982 smash Moon Patrol and was looking to follow it up with another hit. Mr. Nishiyama had noticed the rising popularity of martial arts movies and felt this would be a good fit for a game. The one movie that directly influenced him was Bruce Lee's Game of Death, especially the Devil's Temple with a boss on each level. During development, the name of the game was changed to Spartan X to tie in with the Jackie Chan movie of the same name. The one thing that set this game apart from the pack was the speed of the gameplay. The game scrolls from left to right alternatively with each level. At the time, platform and beat 'em up games were all single screen with no scrolling, so this was a big step up. The music is also very well done with a nice assortment of digitized grunts and groans. The game opens with Thomas and his girlfriend Sylvia celebrating date night when all of a sudden, numerous armed thugs kidnap her. Thomas finds a letter from Mr. X telling him to come to the Devil's Temple if he wants to save Sylvia's life. The game takes place across 5 levels with a boss at the end of each one. There wasn't a whole lot of moves to master in the game because it was all about efficiency of motion. You have a punch, a kick, and a flying jump kick to aid you in the unlimited horde of martial artists who wish to do you harm. You will have to deal with knife throwers, vicious dwarves, killer dragons, exploding lanterns, and poisonous moths, among others. In later levels, the enemies will gang up on you, and the only way to escape their clutches is to wiggle the joystick back and forth. You have to do this quickly though, because the longer you're in their grips, the more energy you lose. Not only do you have countless enemies to deal with, but the time limit is slowly ticking away as well. The 5 mini-bosses that you encounter at the end of each level are Stick Fighter, Boomerang Fighter, the Giant, the Black Magician, and finally, the leader of the pack, the baddest of the baddies, Mr. X. If you defeat all of these nefarious cretins, you rescue Sylvia and give her a nice warm date night embrace. After this, the game repeats only at a higher difficulty. The game was a massive success when it was released in 1984. The game featured innovative gameplay along with a very fast pace. Most games of the time were single screen affairs, but this one featured silky smooth scrolling and multiple enemies to take out. There could be 5 or 6 enemies on screen at once with no slowdown. The public had not seen anything like this, as it essentially created the beat 'em up genre. The game was also released at just the right time, as the blockbuster hit The Karate Kid was playing to sold out audiences all over the world. There was a little bit of martial arts mania going on, so perhaps this game benefited from it. Thanks to the massive popularity of the arcade original, there were a number of conversions released. Some of them turned out pretty good, while others, not so much. Let's take a look at the top-selling, highly reviewed Spectrum version. Whoever rated this game so high must have been blind in their left eye and unable to see out of the right one. For a conversion of Kung Fu Master to succeed, you need fast gameplay, good controls, and decent graphics. This version fails in all 3 categories. The game is so slow and choppy it feels like I'm trying to stream a video on a dial-up modem. There is some really bad color clash going on as well. There is a version of the theme playing in the background, but frankly, my ears were starting to bleed after a couple of minutes. So would I recommend this version? Absolutely not. The Apple II version is up next, and apparently this version takes place at night because there are no backgrounds to speak of. I'm sure this was done to speed up the gameplay, and to be honest, the gameplay is nice and fast. Unfortunately, there is only one button to be used, which does hinder the gameplay just a bit. As for the sound, what sound? If previous attempts at sound effects and music on the Apple II is anything to go by, perhaps this is a good thing. Up next is the Amstrad version. The graphics are nice and detailed and very colorful. The Thomas sprite looks very good, but the enemy sprites do look a bit chunky. The animation is pretty good, although not as smooth as the Commodore version. The gameplay is fast, almost as fast as the arcade original. The problem comes with the hit detection, which is a bit spotty, and also having only one button doesn't help. Proving he's pretty fly for a white guy, Thomas gets to take the elevator in between levels rather than take the stairs. In a rather bizarre move, the game was actually converted to the Atari 2600. Considering the hardwares from 1977, this is a heck of a conversion. There were some sacrifices made though, such as the backgrounds being not as detailed, and also the jump kick is missing entirely, but everything else is pretty good. Not only are the sprites large, but they're pretty detailed as well. The animation is nice and smooth, as is the scrolling. The gameplay is nice and fast and feels like the arcade game. Sticking with the Atari platform, we have the 7800 version. Now this is how you do an arcade conversion. The graphics, especially the backgrounds, are nice and detailed and very colorful. The sprites are large and nicely animated. The gameplay is fast and smooth, just as fast as the arcade game. Thanks to the 2-button controller, we finally have a dedicated jump button. There is also a nice rendition of the music. One of the best home conversions of this arcade classic. The MSX version is a bit of a mixed bag. Upon first glance, you'll notice the graphics are good, although a bit sparse. The sprites are well animated with no flicker. The enemy sprites all look identical, but they look nothing like their arcade counterpart. The enemies actually look like the Data East character Karnov, who recently went on the Slim Fast diet. The controls are good, although a bit on the slow side. The problem is, it doesn't look like Kung Fu Master. It looks like the inbred hillbilly third cousin of Kung Fu Master. If this was a generic IP, it would have received a much higher rating upon its release. The good old Commodore 64 version is up next, and unfortunately, it's average at best. While the scrolling is smooth and the gameplay is fast, the hit detection feels just a bit off. Also, the sprites are large, but they are too chunky, and the animation is also too choppy. The drab colors also don't help anything. The music, however, is well done, with a faithful rendition of the in-game theme. You also only have one fire button, so sacrifices to the controls had to be made. Up next is the Game Boy version of Kung Fu Master, but if I wouldn't have told you that, you never would have guessed it. The gameplay is almost identical to the arcade game, but Thomas is no longer in the temple trying to rescue Sylvia. He's been uprooted and relocated to some urban city where Sylvia has been taken. The graphics are nice and detailed with parallax scrolling in the background. The speed is nice and fast and the controls are responsive. This is a good game, but to semi-quote a certain Jedi Master, this is not the arcade game you're looking for. The NES version is another really good conversion despite some sacrifices in the graphics department. The backgrounds are pretty much non-existent, but the animation is nice and smooth. The speed of the gameplay is fast, even with multiple enemies on screen at once. The controls are good, and it feels like you're playing the arcade game, which is exactly what it should feel like. For some reason, they changed the name to Kung Fu rather than Kung Fu Master. It was a launch title for the NES and ended up selling over 3.5 million cartridges. Work was started on a sequel titled Super Kung Fu Master, but unfortunately it was scrapped late in development. This is the only known footage of the game to exist, and it looks very similar to the original arcade game. but obviously the graphics are a lot better. Apparently, the reason they scrapped this version was because IREM wanted to go in a different direction with the game. They wanted a more US-based setting, so they started from scratch and created a game called Vigilante. In 1988, IREM released Vigilante into the arcades. This was always thought of as a spiritual successor to Kung Fu Master, but upon the recent discovery of Super Kung Fu Master, it's since been confirmed that Vigilante was in fact an actual sequel. I had played this game growing up and never realized the connection despite how similar the gameplay is between the two. You take on the role of an unnamed martial artist who becomes a vigilante to rescue a female hostage named Madonna. The game takes place across 5 levels just like Kung Fu Master. You can pick up various weapons throughout the game, which is one major difference. The game is fun to play, so check it out if you get a chance. In 1991, released exclusively for the Famicom in Japan, Spartan X2 was released. Similar to Vigilante and the Game Boy title, this version takes place in an urban city. You take on the role of Johnny Thomas, a private secret agent who sets out to take down a drug syndicate. The game takes place over 6 stages and plays very similar to the arcade original, only this time you have a few extra moves at your disposal. Kung Fu Master was an immediate hit in the arcades when it was released back in 1984. Games such as Double Dragon, Final Fight, and Bad Dudes all owe a debt of gratitude to this game. It essentially created the beat-em-up genre and is still fun to play to this very day. If you have never tried it before and you see it out in the wild, be sure and give it a go. If you like my videos and want to support me on Patreon, please click the link below. Also, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to my content. It's the only way my channel can grow. Thank you so much for watching.